He threw the pen across the mahogany table, laughing as the ink stained the divorce papers. Finally, he sneered, looking at the woman who had cooked his meals and ironed his shirts for 3 years. I'm free of your mediocrity. He thought he was discarding a dead weight to chase a fortune. He didn't know that the woman sitting quietly across from him wasn't just a housewife. She was the sole heiress to the Blackwood sovereignty, a private equity empire worth more than the GDP of a small country. And that signature, it just cost him everything. The air in the conference room of Latham & Watkins on 6th Avenue was cold, sterilized by aggressive air conditioning and the frosty silence between the two people sitting at the long glass table. Outside, New York City was a gray blur of rain and traffic, but inside, Ethan Caldwell felt like he was standing in the sun. He adjusted the cuffs of his bespoke Brioni suit, a gift from Lila, his new partner in both business and pleasure. He looked at the woman sitting opposite him. Sarah. She looked plain. That was the word Ethan always used in his head. Plain. She wore a beige cardigan that had seen better days. Her brown hair pulled back in a loose, messy bun. No makeup. No jewelry except for the simple gold band on her finger, the one he was about to make her take off. Well, Ethan's voice cut through the silence, sharp and impatient. Are you going to stare at it all day, or are you going to sign so we can both get on with our lives? Or, well, so I can get on with mine. Sarah looked down at the document. Decree of absolute divorce. You're sure this is what you want, Ethan? Her voice was soft, barely a whisper. It wasn't pleading. It was strangely solemn, a kind of calm that Ethan mistook for defeat. He scoffed, leaning back in the expensive leather chair. Sarah, let's be real. Look at you. Then look at where I'm going. I just made senior VP at Sterling Hess. I'm closing deals with tech giants in Silicon Valley. I need a partner who fits that world. Someone who can host a gala, not someone who panics about the price of organic eggs. He saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Was it amusement? No. It had to be sadness. I supported you when you were an unpaid intern. Ethan, she said, her finger tracing the edge of the paper. I paid the rent in that basement in Queens. I bought your first suit. And I paid you back, Ethan snapped, slamming his hand on the table. You got the alimony check, didn't you? $50,000. Take it and open a bakery or whatever it is women like you dream of. But stop pretending we're equals. You were a stepping stone, Sarah. A comfortable, boring stepping stone. His phone buzzed. It was a text from Lila Monroe. Has the dead weight signed yet? The reservation at Le Bernardin is at 8 Ujra. Don't be late. I have news about the Obsidian deal. Ethan smiled at the screen. Lila was everything Sarah wasn't. Fierce, ambitious, and the daughter of a real estate mogul. She was the kind of woman who wore Louboutins to breakfast. Sign the papers, Sarah, Ethan said, his voice dropping to a cruel sneer. Do it, and I'll even let you keep the Honda. Sarah picked up the pen. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply uncapped the cheap ballpoint pen and wrote her name in a fluid, elegant script. Sarah Winslow. She pushed the papers across the table. There, she said, standing up. She looked taller suddenly. The beige cardigan didn't look like a rag anymore. It looked like a costume she was tired of wearing. You're free, Ethan. You wanted a life without mediocrity. You have it. Good luck, Sarah, Ethan said, grabbing the papers as if they were a winning lottery ticket. Try not to spend that 50 grand all in one place. He didn't watch her leave. He was too busy texting Lila. Done. I'm yours. If he had watched her, he would have seen something strange. As soon as Sarah stepped out of the skyscraper and onto the rainy sidewalk of 6th Avenue, a caravan of 3 blacked-out Cadillac Escalades screeched to a halt at the curb. Passers-by stopped and stared. These weren't Ubers. These were armored vehicles with diplomatic plates. A man in a sharp charcoal suit, Jameson, the head of security for the Winslow family for 30 years, stepped out of the lead car. He held a massive umbrella over Sarah, shielding her from the rain. Ms. Winslow, Jameson said, bowing his head slightly. Your father has been waiting for the call. Is it done? Sarah pulled the hair tie out of her hair, letting the chestnut waves cascade down her back. She took off the beige cardigan and dropped it into a nearby trash can. Underneath, she wore a simple white silk blouse that probably cost more than Ethan's car. It's done, Jameson, Sarah said, her voice turning into steel. Ethan Caldwell is no longer my husband. Initiate Protocol 0. Jameson opened the car door. And the alimony check, ma'am. Sarah laughed, a cold, terrifying sound. Frame it. It's the cheapest price anyone has ever paid for their own destruction. She slid into the leather back seat. Take me to the airstrip. The Gulf Stream is waiting. We have a board meeting in London tomorrow, and I need to explain to the shareholders why I'm about to acquire Sterling Hess and dismantle it piece by piece. 2 weeks had passed since the divorce. For Ethan, they had been the best 2 weeks of his life. He was currently standing on the balcony of Lila Monroe's penthouse on the Upper East Side, overlooking Central Park. He held a glass of 18-year-old Macallan in one hand and a Cuban cigar in the other. You look like a king, Lila purred, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. She was wearing a stunning red dress diamonds, glittering at her throat. I feel like one, Ethan admitted, turning to kiss her. Divorcing Sarah was the best business decision I ever made. I feel lighter, unburdened. She was dragging you down, darling. Lila agreed, taking a sip of his scotch. You're a shark. She was a goldfish, and now you're ready for the big kill. Ethan nodded. The Obsidian Group. The Obsidian Group was the white whale of the financial world. It was a private equity firm, so exclusive, so wealthy, that it didn't have a public website. They didn't recruit, they chose. Rumor had it they controlled major stakes in everything from aerospace to pharmaceuticals. And word on the street was that the reclusive CEO of Obsidian was coming to New York for the Meridian Charity Gala tonight. If I can land the account for Sterling Hess, Ethan said, his eyes hungry, I won't just be a VP. I'll be a partner. I'll be on the cover of Forbes. And you will, Lila assured him. My father pulled some strings. We're at the head table. Table 1, right next to the Obsidian representatives. Who is the CEO anyway? Ethan asked. No one seems to know. Old man Winslow retired 5 years ago, didn't he? People say his son took over, or maybe a board of directors. Does it matter? Lila shrugged. Money has no face. It just has a smell. And tonight we're going to follow the scent. The Meridian Gala. The Plaza Hotel. The ballroom was a sea of velvet silk and old money. Camera flashes popped like strobe lights as New York's elite filed in. There were hedge fund managers, tech moguls, and A-list celebrities. Ethan walked in with Lila on his arm, feeling like he had arrived. He spotted his boss, Arthur Sterling, near the bar, and walked over, chest puffed out. Ethan, Arthur boomed, shaking his hand. Good to see you. And the lovely Lila. Big night tonight, Ethan. Big night. If the rumors are true, the Winslow heiress herself might make an appearance. Heiress? Ethan frowned. I thought the Winslow family died out. No, no. Arthur lowered his voice. Old man Winslow had a daughter, kept her hidden away, sent her to boarding schools in Switzerland, then she vanished for a few years. Rumor is she wanted to live a normal life before taking the throne. Can you imagine pretending to be poor just to see who really loves you? Ethan laughed. Sounds like a waste of time. Who would want to be poor? Exactly, Lila chimed in. Real power is meant to be flaunted. A hush suddenly fell over the room. It started at the entrance and swept through the crowd like a wave. The music stopped. The chatter died. What's happening? Ethan asked, craning his neck. The massive double doors at the top of the grand staircase swung open. A woman stepped out. She was wearing a gown of midnight blue velvet that hugged every curve embroidered with actual crushed diamonds that caught the light with every movement. Around her neck was the Star of Savoy, a sapphire necklace last seen in the royal court of Italy in the 1920s. Her hair was styled in glamorous Hollywood waves, and her makeup was sharp, accentuating high cheekbones and piercing green eyes. She looked powerful. She looked dangerous. She looked like a queen surveying her subjects. Ethan dropped his glass. It shattered on the marble floor, the sound echoing in the silence. "Oh my God," Lila whispered, clutching Ethan's arm. "Look at that necklace. That's Sarah Winslow." Ethan couldn't breathe. His brain was misfiring, trying to reconcile two impossible images. The woman in the midnight blue gown, radiating billions of dollars of influence, and the woman in the beige cardigan he had told to keep the Honda. It was Sarah, but it wasn't his Sarah. This woman held her head high, her gaze sweeping the room with cold indifference. She began to descend the stairs, flanked by 4 security guards and an entourage of assistants. The crowd parted for her, like the Red Sea. "That's not possible," Ethan stammered, his face draining of color. That's my ex-wife." Arthur Sterling turned to him, his face pale. "You're... what?" "That's Sarah," Ethan whispered. "Ethan," Arthur said, his voice trembling with a sudden, terrifying realization. "You divorced Sarah Winslow, the owner of the Obsidian Group, the woman who literally owns the building we are standing in right now." Sarah reached the bottom of the stairs. A waiter offered her a glass of champagne. She took it, and for the first time her eyes locked onto Ethan. She didn't look angry. She didn't look sad. She smiled. It was the same smile she had given him when she signed the papers. A smile that said, "You have no idea what you've done." She walked straight toward them. Lila, usually so confident, actually took a step back, intimidated by the sheer aura of wealth radiating off Sarah. "Good evening, Arthur." Sarah said, her voice smooth as velvet, but cold as ice. She ignored Ethan completely. "Ms. Winslow," Arthur stuttered, sweating profusely. "An honor. A true honor. We didn't know you were... back." "I never left, Arthur," Sarah said, sipping her champagne. "I was just observing, conducting a field study on the integrity of the modern man." She finally turned her gaze to Ethan. She looked him up and down, inspecting his Brioni suit with a look of mild distaste. "Hello, Ethan," she said. "Sarah," Ethan choked out. You, please." She cut him off, raising a hand. "Ms. Winslow, Sarah was the woman who cooked your pot roast. She doesn't exist anymore. You signed her away, remember? She stepped closer, leaning in, so only he and Lila could hear. I hope you enjoyed the last 2 weeks, Ethan, because I just bought Sterling Hess this morning, which means— She paused, her green eyes sparkling with malice. I'm your boss, and we need to have a very serious performance review. She patted his cheek patronizingly. Don't be late for work tomorrow. I hate tardiness. She turned and walked away, the train of her gown flowing behind her like liquid night, leaving Ethan standing in the shattered glass of his own life. The hangover from the Meridian Gala was nothing compared to the nausea churning in Ethan's stomach as he stood in the lobby of the Sterling Hess building the next morning. He swiped his ID badge at the turnstile. Beep, beep. A red light flashed. Access denied. Must be a glitch, Ethan muttered, trying again. He felt the eyes of the junior analysts on him, the same kids he had yelled at yesterday for getting his coffee order wrong. It's not a glitch, Mr. Caldwell. Ethan turned to see Jameson, the stone-faced security chief, who had held Sarah's umbrella standing by the desk. Next to him was a box, a cardboard box. Jameson, isn't it? Ethan tried to muster his old arrogance. Look, tell Sarah Ms. Winslow that I need to get up to my office. We have the quarterly projections to review. You don't have an office on the 40th floor anymore, Jameson said, his voice flat. He handed Ethan the cardboard box. Your personal effects have been collected. Your new workspace has been prepared. New workspace? Ethan blinked. I'm the Senior Vice President of Sales. Not as of 800 a.m. this morning, Jameson said. Follow me. Ethan was escorted not to the executive elevator, but to the service lift. They didn't go up to the penthouse suites. They went down. To the 4th floor. The back office. This was where the data entry clerks and interns worked, a windowless purgatory of grey cubicles and fluorescent lights that buzzed like dying flies. Jameson led him to a desk in the center of the room. It wasn't even a cubicle. It was an open table exposed on all sides. Here is your assignment, Jameson said, dropping a thick stack of files on the desk. Ms. Winslow wants a manual audit of every expense report you have approved in the last 5 years. She wants every receipt cross-referenced. If there is a discrepancy of even 1 cent, she wants a written explanation. This is a joke, Ethan laughed nervously, looking around. The clerks were staring at him. I'm not doing this. Where is Arthur? Mr. Sterling has been encouraged to take an early retirement, a voice rang out. Ethan spun around. Sarah was standing at the entrance of the floor. She wasn't wearing a ball gown today. She was wearing a razor-sharp white power suit, her hair pulled back in a severe, immaculate ponytail. She looked like a weapon. She walked toward him, the clicking of her heels the only sound in the room. Sarah, we need to talk in private, Ethan hissed, lowering his voice. You can't do this. It's retaliation. I'll sue you. Sue me? Sarah smiled, leaning against his cheap desk. With what money, Ethan? And on what grounds I'm the owner of this company? I'm restructuring. I found that the senior VP role was bloated, full of mediocrity. She used his word. It hit him like a slap. I generated $4 million in revenue last year, Ethan argued, and you cost the company $6 million in client entertainment, travel expenses, and botched mergers that relied on charm rather than due diligence. Sarah countered, pulling a file from under her arm. I spent the last night reviewing your portfolio, Ethan. It's embarrassing. You didn't rise to the top because you were brilliant. You rose because Arthur Sterling liked drinking scotch with you. She tossed the file onto his desk. You have 2 choices, Sarah said, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm register. Option A. You quit. You walk out that door right now, But if you do, I will release this file to every recruitment agency in New York. It details your gross negligence and incompetence. You'll never work in finance again. You won't even get a job as a bank teller." Ethan swallowed hard. His throat felt like sandpaper. "And option B. Option B." Sarah's eyes glittered. "You stay. You work for me. You sit at this desk, and you do the grunt work you think is beneath you. You earn your keep. You prove to me that you are actually worth the air you breathe." "Why?" Ethan whispered. "Why keep me here?" Sarah leaned in close, smelling of expensive jasmine and cold, hard cash. "Because, Ethan," she whispered, "I want to watch you realize that without me, you are nothing. I carried you for 3 years. Now you're going to learn how heavy the world really is." She straightened up and addressed the room. "Get back to work, everyone. Mr. Caldwell has a lot of receipts to tape." As she walked away, Ethan sat in the cheap ergonomic chair. It squeaked. He looked at the mountain of paperwork. He looked at his phone. "Lila. Where are you?" "My card got declined at the spa. Fix it." Ethan put his head in his hands. He was trapped in a glass cage, and Sarah held the only key. By 6:00 p.m., Ethan's eyes were burning. He had spent 8 hours staring at spreadsheets, taping crinkled receipts to paper, and being ignored by 22-year-old interns who knew exactly who he was and enjoyed every second of his downfall. He left the building exhausted. He needed a win. He needed Lila. He hailed a taxi. His company car privileges had been revoked, obviously, and gave the address for Lila's penthouse. When he arrived, the doorman who usually greeted him with a smile and a "Good evening, Mr. Caldwell," stepped in front of him, blocking the entrance. "I'm sorry, sir," the doorman said, looking uncomfortable. "Miss Monroe has left strict instructions. You're not on the list." "Not on the list?" Ethan laughed, a frantic, high-pitched sound. "I live here. Well, practically. I'm her partner. Call her." "She's not accepting calls, sir. And your bags are in the lobby." Ethan pushed past the doorman and saw them. His 3 Louis Vuitton suitcases sitting lonely near the concierge desk. "This is insane," Ethan muttered. He pulled out his phone and dialed Lila. Straight to voicemail. He dialed again. Finally, she picked up. "Lila. What the hell is going on? The doorman won't let me up." "Ethan." Lila's voice was icy. It lacked the purr he was used to. "Don't make a scene. It's tacky." "You locked me out after last night." "Especially after last night," Lila snapped. "Ethan, you didn't tell me your ex-wife was Sarah Winslow. Do you have any idea how much exposure my father has to the Obsidian Group? If Sarah decides to call in his loans, my family is ruined. I can't be seen with you. You're radioactive." "I'm the same man I was yesterday," Ethan shouted, ignoring the stares of people on the street. "We're a power couple, remember?" "No," Lila corrected him. "I'm powerful. You were just an accessory. And now you're out of style. Goodbye, Ethan." The line went dead. Ethan stood on the sidewalk, rain starting to drizzle again. He was homeless. Technically, he still had his apartment in the city, but he had put it on the market last week, anticipating moving in with Lila. It was currently staged with rental furniture and had no electricity. "Fine," he snarled, grabbing his suitcases. "I don't need her. I don't need any of them." He dragged his luggage to the nearest hotel, a mid-range Marriott. He slapped his Platinum American Express card on the counter. "A suite?" he demanded. "For a week?" The receptionist typed for a moment, then frowned. She swiped the card again. "I'm sorry, sir. Declined." "Try it again," Ethan said, sweat beading on his forehead. "It has a $50,000 limit. It says, card reported lost or stolen. Account frozen," she said softly. Ethan froze. He pulled out his debit card. Declined. He pulled out his backup Visa. Declined. He scrambled for his phone and opened his banking app. Account balance, $0. Status frozen. Court order pending. "What?" Ethan yelled. "Who did this?" But he knew who. He sat down on one of his suitcases in the hotel lobby, defeated. Just then, a news alert popped up on the TV screen behind the reception desk. It was a business channel. Breaking news. Obsidian Group announces acquisition of Sterling Hess. New CEO Sarah Winslow vows to clean up corporate corruption and embezzlement. The screen cut to a clip of Sarah at a press conference held earlier that day. She looked radiant. Standing next to her was a tall, strikingly handsome man with salt and pepper hair and a jawline that could cut glass. "Who is that?" Ethan asked the receptionist, dazed. "That's Nathaniel Roth," the receptionist said, looking at the screen dreamily. "The Shark of Wall Street. They say he's the only lawyer who has never lost a case, and rumor is he and Ms. Winslow are engaged." On the screen, a reporter asked, "Ms. Winslow, are you planning on replacing the current management at Sterling Hess?" Sarah looked directly into the camera. "We are conducting a thorough audit. We have found significant financial irregularities regarding one specific executive. We have frozen his assets pending a federal investigation." Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. She wasn't just firing him. She was framing him. Or worse, she was revealing the corners he had cut, the grey areas he had exploited, thinking no one would ever check. She had frozen his money. She had taken his job. She had taken his reputation. And she had done it all in less than 24 hours. His phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "You told me to keep the Honda. I hope you kept the spare key. It's parked on 42nd Street. It's the only asset in your name not currently seized by the IRS. Drive safe. S." Ethan ran out of the hotel, leaving his luxury suitcases behind, because he couldn't carry them all. He ran blocks in the rain until he found it. The dented grey Honda Civic. The car he had mocked her for driving. The car he had refused to be seen in. It was unlocked. He threw himself into the driver's seat, soaking wet, shivering. He put the key in the ignition. It sputtered, but started. The heater blasted air that smelled of stale French fries and the vanilla air freshener Sarah used to like. Ethan Caldwell. The man who thought he was a king gripped the steering wheel and screamed. He had nowhere to go, no money for gas, no friends who would pick up the phone. And the worst part, he knew Sarah was watching. From the shadows of an alleyway across the street, a black Cadillac sat idling. Inside, Sarah watched Ethan bang his fists on the steering wheel of the Civic. "Shall we intervene, ma'am?" Jameson asked from the driver's seat. "No," Sarah said, watching the man she had once loved, the man who had looked at her with such contempt, break down. "Let him sit in it. He needs to understand that rock bottom has a basement." She turned to Nathaniel Roth, who was sitting beside her reviewing a legal brief on a tablet. "Is the forensic audit ready for Phase 2? She asked. Nathaniel looked up, a wolfish grin on his face. "It is. We found the offshore accounts he tried to hide during the marriage. Turns out he was hiding money from you while you were paying his rent. That's perjury, Sarah. We can put him in prison." Sarah looked back at the Honda Civic. "Prison is too easy, Nate," she said softly. "I don't want him behind bars. I want him to owe me. I want him to spend the next 10 years working off his debt to me, knowing that every bite of food he eats is because I allowed it. She tapped on the window. Drive. We have a dinner reservation. As the Cadillac pulled away, Ethan saw the taillights. He knew it was her. He looked at the dashboard. The gaslight was on. He had 15 miles of range left. And then he remembered something. His mother. The woman he hadn't spoken to in 3 years, because Lila said she was too working class. She lived in a trailer park in New Jersey. It was his only option. Ethan put the car in gear. The King of New York was going home to Mommy. But the road ahead was filled with twists he couldn't even imagine, because Sarah Winslow wasn't the only one with secrets. The drive to New Jersey took 3 hours. It should have taken 1, but Ethan drove at 45 miles per hour, terrified that the Honda would break down or run out of gas. He pulled into Sunnyvale Estates just after midnight. It was a depressing grid of aluminum siding and gravel driveways. He parked the Honda in front of Lot 42, a single-wide trailer with a peeling pink door. He hadn't been here in 5 years. He hadn't invited his mother, Martha Caldwell, to his wedding. He had told his colleagues she was traveling in Europe when she was actually working double shifts at a diner. He knocked. The door creaked open. Martha stood there, in a flannel robe, a cigarette dangling from her lips. She looked older than he remembered. Harder. "Well," she said, squinting through the smoke. "If it isn't the prodigal son, did your GPS break, or did you run out of people to impress? Mom." Ethan croaked, his voice breaking. I messed up." Martha looked at his soaked suit, the mud on his Italian shoes, and the desperate look in his eyes. She didn't hug him. She just stepped aside. "Couch is lumpy," she said. "Don't wake me up before noon." The next morning, Ethan woke up to the smell of bacon and the sound of heavy machinery. He sat up his back, screaming in protest. The trailer was small, cluttered with ceramic figurines and old newspapers. He looked out the window. A sleek silver Bentley flying spur was navigating the potholes of the trailer park, looking like a spaceship landing in a junkyard. It pulled up right next to his Honda. "No," Ethan whispered. "They can't find me here." A man stepped out. It wasn't Jameson. It was Nathaniel Roth, Sarah's fiancé and legal shark. He was wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than the entire trailer park. He navigated the mud with surprising grace and knocked on the door. Martha opened it, holding a spatula. "We don't want any Bibles, and we don't want any solar panels." "Mrs. Caldwell," Nathaniel said, his voice smooth and charming, "I'm not selling anything. I'm here to offer your son a lifeline." Ethan stepped into the doorway, panic rising in his chest. "What do you want, Roth? You took my job. You took my money. What else is there?" Nathaniel smiled, revealing perfect white teeth. He pulled a thick document from his briefcase. "We took your job because you were incompetent, Ethan. We froze your assets because you are a criminal." "I never stole anything," Ethan shouted. "Technically, no. You didn't stick a gun in a teller's face," Nathaniel agreed, handing him the document. "But according to the forensic audit Sarah commissioned, you approved $4 million in payments to a consulting firm called Apex Solutions, a firm that doesn't exist, a firm registered to a P.O. box in the Cayman Islands." Ethan went pale. Lila told me to do that. She said it was a tax workaround for the Sterling account. I didn't know it was fake. Ignorance is not a defense in federal court." "Ethan," Nathaniel said coldly, "that's embezzlement, fraud, Money laundering. That carries a sentence of 15 to 20 years in a federal penitentiary. Martha dropped her spatula. Ethan, is this true? She set me up, Mom. Lila set me up, Ethan pleaded. It doesn't matter who set it up, Nathaniel interrupted. You signed the checks. Your signature is on everything. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. Sarah Ms. Winslow is a benevolent woman. She doesn't want to see her ex-husband rot in a cell. It looks bad for PR. So she is offering you a plea deal, a private one. What kind of deal? Ethan asked, trembling. You owe the company $4.2 million, Nathaniel said. You will work it off. I can't pay that back. It would take a lifetime. Exactly. Nathaniel grinned. You will work for the Winslow Foundation. You will perform community service and general labor. Your wages will be garnished 100% until the debt is paid. In exchange, we do not hand this file over to the FBI. General labor? Ethan asked, horrified. Sarah is hosting a charity gala in the Hamptons next Saturday, Nathaniel said, checking his Rolex. We're short on catering staff. I suggest you get fitted for a vest. And Ethan? Don't be late. The hourly rate is minimum wage. You have a lot of hours to clock. Nathaniel turned and walked back to the Bentley. Before he got in, he looked back. Oh, and bring the Honda. The valet parking is for guests only. The Winslow estate in the Hamptons was not a house. It was a compound, a sprawling mansion of white stone overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, surrounded by manicured hedges and security guards with earpieces. Ethan Caldwell stood in the service kitchen, adjusting his bow tie. He wasn't wearing Brioni today. He was wearing a polyester waiter's uniform that was slightly too tight in the shoulders. Tray up, the catering manager yelled. Caldwell, stop daydreaming. Champagne to the East Terrace. Move! Ethan grabbed a heavy silver tray, loaded with crystal flutes. He took a deep breath and pushed through the swinging doors. The party was in full swing. A jazz quartet played softly by the pool. The air smelled of sea salt and money. Ethan kept his head down, weaving through the crowd. He recognized half the people there, former clients, college buddies, rivals. Champagne, sir, he mumbled, offering the tray to a group of men he used to play golf with. Don't mind if I do, one said, not even looking at Ethan's face. To them, he was furniture, invisible. He moved toward the VIP section, dread pooling in his stomach. Sitting at a high-top table laughing loudly was Lila Monroe. She was draped on the arm of a new man, Victor Cray, a Russian tech billionaire known for being ruthless. Lila looked stunning in emerald green. Ethan tried to turn around, but a guest bumped into him. The tray wobbled. A single glass of champagne tipped over and splashed onto the shoulder of Victor Cray's suit. You idiot! Victor roared, jumping up. This is custom Armani. Look what you did! The music stopped. Silence fell over the terrace. Lila turned annoyance on her face until she saw the waiter. Her eyes went wide. Ethan, she gasped. Then a slow, cruel smile spread across her face. Oh my God! Victor, look. It's my ex. The crowd murmured. People pulled out their phones. Ethan Caldwell, the rising star of Wall Street, wiping champagne off a Russian oligarch's jacket. I'm sorry, sir, Ethan stammered, grabbing a napkin. I'll clean it. Get away from me. Victor shoved him. Ethan stumbled back, dropping the tray. Glass shattered everywhere. Look at you. Lila laughed, standing up to perform for the crowd. I always knew you were a loser, Ethan. But this is pathetic. Did you spend all your alimony already? I didn't get any alimony, Ethan said through gritted teeth, because you helped me sign it away, and you set me up with the Apex account, Lila. You told me it was legal. Lila laughed harder. Oh, grow up, Ethan. Nobody forced you to sign those checks. You were so desperate and to impress me, so desperate to be a big shot. You didn't even read the fine print. You were the perfect patsy. She turned to Victor. He's a fraud, darling. Stole millions. I had to leave him before he dragged me down. Ethan's fists clenched. He wanted to scream. He wanted to tell them all the truth. Is there a problem here? The voice was soft, but it carried the weight of a gavel strike. Sarah Winslow stepped out of the shadows. She wore a black tuxedo suit, simple, elegant, and severe. Beside her stood Nathaniel Roth and 2 security guards. Ms. Winslow, Victor Cray, said, his tone instantly respectful. This clumsy waiter ruined my jacket. I saw, Sarah said calmly. She walked over to Ethan, who was kneeling on the ground, picking up shards of glass. She looked down at him. For a moment, Ethan thought she was going to fire him, to humiliate him further. Instead, she turned to Lila. Miss Monroe, Sarah said. I believe you dropped something. Sarah snapped her fingers. Jameson stepped forward and handed Lila a folder. What is this? Lila asked, her smile faltering. That, Sarah said, addressing the crowd, is a transcript of a conversation recorded in your penthouse 3 months ago. In it, you discuss with your father how to use Ethan Caldwell's signature to siphon funds from Sterling Hess into your family's failing real estate projects. The color drained from Lila's face. That's illegal. You can't record me. I bought the building, Lila, Sarah said coldly. I own the security system. I own the servers. I own the data. Sarah turned to Victor Cray. Mr. Cray, I wouldn't get too comfortable with Ms. Monroe. According to my intelligence, she's planning to pitch you a revolutionary crypto scheme tonight. It's a Ponzi scheme. Victor pulled his arm away from Lila as if she were contagious. Get out, Sarah said to Lila, and take your father with you. My lawyers have already sent the evidence to the district attorney. I imagine you'll be trading that emerald dress for an orange jumpsuit very soon. Lila looked around. The crowd was staring at her with disgust. Her social currency had just crashed to 0. She fled the party sobbing. Sarah looked back down at Ethan. He was still on his knees, holding the broken glass. He looked up at her, shock written all over his face. She had saved him. Stand up, Ethan, she commanded. He stood up, brushing glass from his knees. Why did you do that? You hate me. Sarah stepped closer, her green eyes searching his. I don't hate you, Ethan, she said quietly. Hate requires energy. I pitied you. You were a blind fool who thought he was a visionary. She gestured to the shattered glass. Clean this up, then go to the library. We need to discuss the terms of your debt. It seems the principal amount has changed. Changed? Ethan asked. Yes. Sarah turned to walk away. You helped me catch Lila Monroe. That's worth a bonus. But don't think you're off the hook. You're not a waiter anymore, Ethan. I have a new job for you. What job? Sarah paused, looking back over her shoulder. My personal assistant. If you want to survive in my world, you're going to have to learn from the master. Be in my office at 6:00 a.m., and for God's sake burn that polyester suit. As Sarah walked away, Ethan felt a strange sensation in his chest. It wasn't fear anymore. It was respect. He watched Lila's car speed away in shame. He looked at Sarah, the woman he had divorced, commanding the room like an empress. He realized then that the story wasn't over. He had hit rock bottom, yes, but Sarah had just thrown him a rope. The question was, would he use it to climb up, or would he use it to hang himself? The silence on the 90th floor of the Obsidian Tower was heavy, a physical weight that pressed against the glass walls. It was 2:14 a.m. New York City lay sprawled below them, a grid of glittering lights that looked deceptively peaceful. But up here in the rarefied air of the Blackwood sovereignty, there was no peace. There was only the relentless, grinding machinery of empire. Ethan Caldwell stood by the espresso machine in the corner of the office, waiting for the extraction to finish. He checked his watch. The stream of dark liquid needed to cut off at exactly 25 seconds to achieve the crema Sarah preferred. 6 months ago, Ethan would have scoffed at this. He would have called it menial, degrading work for a man of his stature. But the Ethan Caldwell who wore bespoke Brioni suits and bragged about closing deals he didn't understand was dead. The man standing in the office now was thinner, harder, and infinitely sharper. He wore a charcoal suit off the rack, functional, unpretentious. His eyes were rimmed with permanent dark circles, the badge of honor for surviving half a year as Sarah Winslow's personal shadow. He placed the cup on a saucer. No sugar. Temperature exactly 195 degrees. He walked across the expanse of plush carpet toward the desk where Sarah was working. She hadn't sat down in 4 hours. She was pacing the length of the floor, a tablet clutched in her hand, her silhouette framed against the dark skyline. The Bolivian Ministry of Energy just sent the revised terms, Sarah said, not turning around. Her voice was tight, vibrating with a tension Ethan had learned to read like a barometer. They're stalling, which means someone else is in their ear. Richard Croft, Ethan said immediately. He set the coffee down on her desk, precisely 3 inches from her laptop, safe from any potential spills. Sarah turned. Her face was pale, stripped of the gala makeup and the public armor she wore during the day. This was the real Sarah, the architect of a $1 trillion portfolio carrying the weight of thousands of employees on her shoulders. Croft is leveraging the lithium crisis, Sarah said, rubbing her temples. If he secures those mining rights, he controls the supply chain for electric vehicle batteries for the next decade. He doesn't just want to beat us, Ethan. He wants to strangle the Obsidian Group. He wants to bankrupt my legacy. Ethan moved to his own desk, a smaller, functional station, positioned just outside her immediate orbit. He opened his laptop, his fingers flying across the keys. We have the liquidity to outbid him, Ethan stated, his voice calm, cutting through the panic in the room. I moved the liquid reserves from the Cayman holding accounts this morning, anticipating the stall. The funds are sitting in the escrow account in Zurich. We can authorize a wire transfer the second the market opens in La Paz. Sarah stopped pacing. She looked at him. For a fleeting second, the mask of the Titan slipped. She looked at him not as an employee or an ex-husband, but as a partner in the trenches. You moved the reserves before I asked, she asked softly. I read the geopolitical risk report you discarded yesterday, Ethan replied without looking up from his screen. Instability in the region usually leads to cash-heavy demands. I wanted us to be ready. Good, she whispered, taking a sip of the espresso. You're learning. The air in the room shifted. For the first time in 6 months, it wasn't hostile. It was professional, efficient, lethal. Then the red phone on Ethan's desk rang. It was a jarring, mechanical sound in the quiet office. That line was unlisted. Only 5 people in the world had that number, and 3 of them were sitting on the board of directors. Ethan looked at the caller ID. Unknown caller. "It's him," Sarah said. Her eyes went cold. "It's Croft." Ethan reached for the receiver. "Put it on speaker," Sarah commanded, her voice turning to steel. "I want to hear him beg." Ethan pressed the button. "This is the office of Sarah Winslow. It is 2:00 a.m. "Ethan, my boy." The voice on the other end oozed through the speaker, rich and oily. It was Richard Croft. "I didn't think you would be awake. But then again, dogs don't sleep when their masters are working, do they?" Ethan felt a muscle in his jaw jump. He glanced at Sarah. She was leaning against her desk, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. She gestured for him to continue. "State your business, Richard," Ethan said firmly. "I'm not calling for Sarah." Croft chuckled. "I know she's there pacing in her ivory tower, panicking about the lithium. I'm calling for you, Ethan." "Me?" "I know your situation," Croft purred. "I know she has you on a leash, working off a debt that you'll never repay on a minimum wage salary. It's pathetic, really. A man of your potential scrubbing floors for the ex-wife who humiliated him." Ethan looked at his hands. They were clean, but he could still feel the phantom grime of the trailer park, the sting of the champagne glass he had cleaned up in the Hamptons. "Get to the point," Ethan said. "The point is, I have a lifeline," Croft said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I need the encryption key to Sarah's private server, the one housing the geological surveys for the Bolivian sector. You have access to her passwords, don't you, Ethan? You're the gatekeeper." The room seemed to drop in temperature. Sarah didn't move. She didn't breathe. She just watched Ethan with eyes that were terrifyingly void of emotion. "And what do I get?" Ethan asked. "Freedom," Croft said. "I will wire $5 million to a blind account in Singapore within 10 minutes of receiving the key, and I will use my legal team to squash whatever debt agreement you signed with the Winslow estate. You can walk out of that tower tonight, Ethan. You can have your life back. The suits, the cars, the women. You can be the king of New York again." $5 million. The number hung in the air. It was enough to disappear, enough to never look at a spreadsheet again, enough to buy back his pride. Ethan looked at the phone. Then he looked at Sarah. He thought about the last 6 months. He thought about the grueling 18-hour days. But he also thought about the brilliance he had witnessed. He saw how Sarah fought not for vanity, but for the survival of her family's legacy. He realized that the king of New York he used to be was a fraud. He had been a hollow suit coasting on charm and Sarah's unseen money. The man he was now. This man was tired. He was broke. But he was useful. For the first time in his life, he was actually competent. He realized he didn't want the money. He didn't want the easy way out. He wanted to be the person who could stand in this room at 2:00 a.m. and hold the line. Ethan leaned into the speakerphone. "You have a fundamental misunderstanding of the situation, Richard," Ethan said, his voice steady and calm. "Oh, and what is that?" Croft asked. "You think I'm here because I have to be," Ethan said. "But you can't buy loyalty that you haven't earned, and frankly, Richard, you can't afford me." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "Go to hell." Ethan slammed his finger down on the disconnect button. The line went dead. Silence rushed back into the room, louder than before. Sarah let out a long, slow breath. She walked over to the window, staring out at the city she owned. "You knew he was going to call," Ethan said, the realization dawning on him. "Croft is a predator," Sarah said her back to him. "He smells weakness. He assumed you were the weak link in my armor. He assumed everyone has a price." She turned around. "I had Jameson monitoring the line from the security hub downstairs. If you had accepted the offer, if you had typed even one character of that password, Jameson would have come through that door," Ethan finished for her. "And I would be in a federal holding cell by sunrise." "Yes," Sarah admitted. "It was a test, Ethan. The final test. In this world, competence is common. Loyalty is the only currency that matters." She reached into the inner pocket of her blazer and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She walked over to Ethan's desk and dropped it onto his keyboard. Ethan picked it up. It was the debt agreement, the document that had shackled him to the Winslow Foundation for the last 6 months. The paper that detailed the $4.2 million he owed. Stamped across the front in bold red ink were 3 words: "Paid in full." Ethan stared at the paper, his hands trembling slightly. I don't understand. I haven't worked off the principal. The math doesn't add up." "The math is irrelevant," Sarah said, her voice soft but firm. "You just saved this company billions of dollars by not selling us out. Consider the debt settled, services rendered." She walked back to her desk and sat down, interlacing her fingers. "You're free, Ethan. Officially. Legally. You can take your Honda Civic Drive out of the garage and never come back. I'll even write you a recommendation letter. You can go sell bonds or real estate, or whatever it is you think will make you happy." She paused, her green eyes locking onto his. "Or," she continued, "you can stay. The salary will be adjusted to reflect your position as chief of staff. The hours will be brutal. The pressure will be agonizing. And I will never, ever let you forget who sits in the big chair." "But," she gestured to the skyline, to the empire of lights below, "you will be part of something real. You will help me build the future." Ethan looked at the door. The exit sign glowed green in the darkness. It was the way out. It was the path to an easy life. Then he looked at the woman sitting behind the desk. The woman he had mocked, the woman he had underestimated, the woman who had broken him down just to show him how to build himself back up. He picked up the paid-in-full document. He folded it neatly and placed it in his pocket. He sat down at his desk and opened his laptop. "The Bolivian markets open in 3 hours and 45 minutes, Ms. Winslow," Ethan said quietly. "If we want to crush Croft, we need to restructure the bid before the opening bell." A tiny, almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of Sarah's lips. It wasn't a smile of affection. It was a smile of recognition. Game recognized game. "Make the coffee, Ethan," she said, pulling her tablet closer. "Black. 195 degrees, Ethan replied. "Coming right up." They weren't husband and wife anymore. They were something far more dangerous. They were a team, and as the sun began to crest over the horizon of New York City, Ethan Caldwell realized that for the first time in his life, he was exactly where he belonged. And that, my friends, is the terrifying truth about the Winslow divorce. Ethan Caldwell thought he was signing away a boring housewife, but he was actually signing away his own ego. He learned the hard way that true power doesn't need to shout. It just needs to sign the checks. What did you think of Sarah's final decision? Did Ethan deserve redemption, or should she have left him in the gutter? Let me know your theories in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this twisty saga of revenge, wealth, and betrayal, please smash that Like button, it really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss out on the next dramatic story. Until next time, remember, be careful who you underestimate.